This is Your Own Best Company, a podcast for people who love to work alone. Hey there, everybody. Franklin Taggart here, and this is Your Own Best Company, a podcast for people who love working alone. And I have to tell you right up front, if you can't tell already, I have a summer cold going on. And so I'm just this big old nasty mess. My voice is being enhanced by all manner of sore throats and bodily fluids. So I apologize ahead of time for the way that I sound right now. But I wanted to carry on with this conversation because I think it's an important one. And the thing that struck me, my guest Jesse and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. And in that conversation, he was just talking a little bit about some of the experiences that he's had as a freedom-seeking entrepreneur in the digital realm. And it just felt like that it would be a really good idea to talk about, most of us get into our work because we want to have more autonomy. We want to have a lot more control of our own vision and mission. And we really just want to kind of find the best expression of ourselves in the world. And Jesse is somebody, I think, who really embodies that. And Jesse Panama is my guest today, and he retired from the corporate world in 1998 at the ripe old age of 23. Now, at 23, I don't even think I knew my name yet. He became a pioneer in the world of online marketing, then in its infancy. And for the past 24 years, he's been a global internet entrepreneur, running his businesses from every continent except Antarctica. Do you have Antarctica on your map, Jesse? Is that going to be?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask. You see that bottom bar there?
Yeah.
Antarctica is the base that's holding everything else up. So we really need to see what's out there, right?
I know some folks that work at McMurdo Station. Maybe I can hook you up. It's cold, man. It's cold. Be ready. Even summer, it's cold. So anyhow, let's get back to the introduction here. The one thing Jesse always longed for was a step-by-step blueprint for how to leave your job, make money online while helping people, and live life on your own terms. He couldn't find one, so he wrote The Art of Freedom, and he's honored to be your Freedom Sherpa. I like that tag, man. That's a good tag. Now, there are some other things that you might want to know about Jesse as well. One of the things that's his interest is why becoming a secret agent will allow you to bust free from your job and start your new life of freedom faster than you ever imagined possible. That's something that drives him in his work. And this is the one that I'm very intrigued by, Jesse, how an ancient secret from a Japanese island will help you design your masterpiece life and make your victory inevitable. So, folks, I want you to welcome Jesse Panama. Jesse, how are you this morning?
Doing very well, Franklin. Thank you for having me. I wish I could splash some like lemon herbal tea through the screen for you there. I feel your pain.
Well, I've been spraying my throat spray and taking all my extra supplements and all that. So I'm feeling all right. I sound a little worse for the wear.
All right. Well, maybe a little freedom elixir can help us through this next hour or however long we have.
Well, maybe what I'll do is just have you do more of the talking than me.
My best.
Jesse, let's start with that last little intriguing bit that you had there. An ancient secret from a Japanese island will help you design your masterpiece life and make your victory inevitable. There's a story in there, and I'd love to hear it.
There is a story. In fact, I'm seriously considering going down the rabbit hole of that ancient secret for my second book. And so to plant the seed of that, the country of Japan consistently, it's either number one or number two, but it's always right up there in terms of highest life expectancy.
Yeah.
And then within Japan, the island of Okinawa is almost always the highest life expectancy in Japan. So essentially it's the best of the best. And we may know these terms like blue zones, right?
Yeah.
We've heard about that for people who live to an older age. But what's interesting is that in many of the other blue zone areas around the world, the people tend to point to their diet or their sort of specific things they do or they ingest. But in Okinawa, when asked, why they live so long, they consistently and immediately point to this concept called Ikigai.
Right.
Which does not have a direct translation, but the closest I think we've been able to find is a reason for living. Or if we want to boil it down to one word, it's a bit overused and cliche, but we could say purpose.
Yeah.
And so, for example, the Okinawans find the American concept of retirement to be absolutely absurd. The idea is, why the hell would we build a life that we want to retire from? Like, it actually doesn't make logical sense, even though it's so embedded into our culture. Like, what if we could flip that script and start doing right now much of what we would want to do when we retire? Why can't that be possible? And if not, then if we can't start doing it right now, how can we actively move in that direction and be more mindful of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we want to go?
Ikigai now, I hear that in a lot of career-oriented circles, helping people to really, it's kind of like a Venn diagram on steroids. It's like
it is
finding all of these different things that overlap. What was it about that model that really spoke to you?
What really spoke to me, Franklin, is, spiritual beliefs aside about the afterlife and such, because that's above my pay grade. We only get one shot at this thing called life, in the traditional sense. And so we really want to make it count. We want to be mindful of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And there are infinite number of ways to make money online, whether as a business owner, as a freelancer, as a solopreneur. There are so many successful business models. And I see people getting caught up on, but this works better, or that works better. That's not the right conversation to be having, in my opinion. And that's not the right question to be asking.
Yeah.
The right rabbit hole to be going down is, what is the overlap between your skills and your passions? And then once you find that overlap, then we take it to a next level of validation, meaning that there's actually money being exchanged in the area of those overlaps. And if all three of those things are in place, then it makes the whole journey so much more joyful, a lot less resistance, and frankly, a lot more profitable.
It intrigues me whenever I come across a model like that what happens when a person has two of the three, but that third one's not really clear or in place.
So in my opinion, actually, if you do this right, so to speak, and if you're really open and authentic with yourself and you're willing to do the research to validate, you're never not going to have all of them in place. And so in my view, if you don't have them all in place in take number one, then you go back to the drawing board and you go to take number two. And so what we do is we take people through a series of questions and exercises we actually have them make lists of, what am I good at? And then what am I passionate about? And we jog their memories and their brains and their thought processes by simply looking at their habits. So for example, what blogs do you read? What magazines do you subscribe to? What public figures do you follow? And my favorite question of all, which I don't see asked very often, is, what do you find yourself doing when you lose track of time?
Yeah.
Like those precious zones where hours go by and you feel like it's only been 5 minutes. What are you doing? What do you find yourself doing? That's something you probably want to stick with and run with. And then again, once we find that overlap of skills and passions, then we take it through the research, the validation stage to make sure money's exchanging hands.
Yeah.
And we have a variety of tools to do that. And more often than not, you're going to find something right off the bat. But if you don't, the beautiful thing is this is a timeless model that you can go back to again and again, no matter what the latest technology is or the latest tactics are.
Yeah.
And on a meta level, this grows along with you growing, because, my passions 5 years ago might not be exactly the same as my passions now or my passions in 5 years. So we always want to be updating this list, finding new overlaps, and then again, running them through the research tools, because the marketplace also changes, right? And so if the timing was not right a year ago for one of those items that made it to your list, it doesn't mean it's not right today.
One of the things I was talking with a friend the other day, even in this area of digital marketing and digital sales, et cetera, I mean, the things in that realm change so rapidly that it's become really impossible for one person to keep up with it.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and both of us used to do workshops just on how to do Facebook. We actually had a workshop on just how to do social media.
Mm.
And that workshop now can't be done. It's just not possible to be done, because every one of the social media platforms and the new ones that have been added to the mix, every one of them has an evolving and changing setup that is not going to be necessarily exactly the same from day to day and week to week. And so even the things that we knew a year ago about how to use Facebook, there's not a market for them now, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I find very interesting. And I think that the Ikigai is a very helpful tool in that area. It helps you to establish, like, are all of the pieces in place for this to be a viable business idea? Now, certainly 2 out of 3 makes a great hobby.
Mm-hmm.
2 out of 3 can make a really wonderful artisan project. But if there's not a market for it, then the business just doesn't have a shot,
Sure.
How do you investigate? I'd like to hear more about how you investigate the viability of a market for a person's skills and passion.
Well, I think for sustained success, it's important that we start with a more timeless answer, because as you appropriately pointed out, the tools and tactics and platforms are just always changing. So
Yeah.
if we're going to predicate this model on Facebook or on Amazon or on YouTube or on any of the big platforms, they're always going to change. And in my view, that's a vulnerable place to be.
Yeah.
However, if we come at it from the perspective of step one being to intimately know and understand our audience and who we're trying to reach.
Yeah.
And then once we achieve that, step two is looking at where are they hanging out online right now.
Yeah.
Because they'll always be hanging out somewhere. So when I started in this game, there was no Facebook. In fact, there was no social media at all.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't Reddit either, for that matter.
Was there even MySpace at that point?
There was not MySpace yet.
So it was just all like bulletin boards and stuff like that?
Exactly. We were talking forums, bulletin boards, message boards. And to this day, a lot of those still exist and are going strong. Now, some of them have been swallowed up by Facebook groups, yes.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of spaces where bulletin boards and message boards are alive and well and have hundreds or thousands of posts a day.
Yeah.
So my point being, there will always be somewhere where your people are hanging out online. And once you find that, once you identify that, then we want to get into basically the conversation going on in their minds. And we want to pay very close attention to the questions they're asking, the posts they're making, the pain points they're expressing. We want to know their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their doubts, their insecurities, so that we can truly and genuinely help them solve those problems and get to the next level. And so to take that timeless model down, that abstract model down, to something more tangible, at the time of this recording, Facebook groups are in fact a fantastic tool. In some verticals, meaning some niches, some markets, Facebook groups have effectively replaced forums. And so I would highly encourage people to join groups related to the topic or the audience that they want to serve. Start engaging, start asking questions, start responding to questions as well. Start just adding value, with no expectation of anything in return. Just be of service. And so Facebook groups is a big one. Amazon can work, but I like to use it in a particular way of looking at who are the thought leaders in your space. What publications or courses or products or books have they released? And then I like to pay a lot of attention to both the 5-star reviews and then also the 1-star or 2-star reviews. I want to see what people love about it, and then where people think there are gaps or things missing, because those are the exact gaps we would want to fill.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, Jesse, where do you spend most of your time online?
So another really powerful one is Udemy, which is basically an online marketplace for courses, for education. And what gets really interesting with Udemy is that, unlike Facebook groups and unlike forums, this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of people actually paying for these solutions. So with Amazon, for example, when you're reading reviews, they're not necessarily from paying customers. Anyone can kind of leave a review. Yes, they have some measures in place, but they're not always successful. And a majority of the reviews on Amazon, at least in the information space, are for books, which can, especially when we're talking Kindle, can be, just a couple of dollars. So people leaving reviews don't necessarily have a lot of skin in the game. And Udemy, on the other hand, the people who are leaving reviews are paying customers, paying students for those courses. And so you can sort and massage that data in a number of ways. For example, if you're interested in finding out not only, where have people spent, say, $10 in my space, which would be like the price of a book, for example, I might want to know where people spent $100, $500, even $1,000. Where have people demonstrated they're willing to really step up and spend a lot of money for this solution? And you can sort by price, by number of students, and then you can look at the reviews within that subset, and that's where it gets really powerful. This is literally, Franklin, this is the kind of data that corporations pay millions of dollars for. They do their market research, and I'm 2 decades into this game, and it's still mind-blowing to me that it's just readily available out there, and with a few clicks we can get at it.
You can find anything that you want, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Well, Jesse, I'm curious. I'd like to shift gears a little bit here. You were 23 when you knew that corporate life wasn't for you. What was it that led up to that moment?
Where do I begin? So I've had a lurid fascination with entrepreneurship, with solopreneurship since I was probably a teenager. And I would send away for all kinds of things, like get rich quick schemes. Of course, at the time, I didn't know they were get rich quick schemes. I thought they were legitimate business opportunities. But I was always fascinated with the idea of living life on my own terms. And when I went to college, I knew I wanted to eventually be in the business world. And so I double majored in marketing and finance, but I still had this entrepreneurial blood flowing through me, if you will. And so I actually took one of the first courses offered in entrepreneurship, and I very much wanted to pursue that path. But then I also had this other part of me, Franklin, that had a lot of doubt and fear and insecurity, and thinking to myself, is this just a pipe dream? Like, can I really do this? I'm 20, 21 years old. But like, what am I going to do? What am I going to start? And this of course is when the internet was in its infancy and was really just a research tool. Like, there was no e-commerce. There was no ability to like throw up an idea and start testing it as there is today.
Yeah.
So long story short, I did take a job right out of college. Mostly because my other dream was to move across the country to the West Coast and live on the beach in California. So I said, okay, at least this job will help me do that. And maybe working in a corporation won't be so bad, right? And spoiler alert, yes, it was so bad. Like 5 days in, I just absolutely knew I hated it. It felt like living hell to me. And what was even more upsetting was how disorienting it felt to me. I felt like such an outcast. I felt like I even started saying, like, what's wrong with me? Because all of my colleagues seemed to be loving their new job and excited about how they could, climb that corporate ladder. And it just, I had my life flash before my eyes, and I could see the next 30, 40 years being like this. And it just terrified me.
Yeah.
And so I knew there had to be a better way. I knew freedom was possible, but I didn't quite know how to get it. And so I resolved that come hell or high water, I was going to figure it out. But I also knew I couldn't just, theatrically march into my boss's office and say, I quit, because I'm in my early 20s. I have to pay the rent at this new beach apartment in California. And so that's where the other bullet point, when you introduced me, we talked about becoming a secret agent.
Yeah.
And so that was really a key for me in flipping the switch. One, by the way, which I still recommend to people today.
Yeah.
If you know that you want that freedom, if you know that there's a better way, but you don't quite know what it is yet or know how to get it, become a secret agent. And what do I mean by that? Here's what it looked like for me. So during my lunch hour, I would walk over to the Los Angeles Public Library. I would hop on their internet terminals. And then I would start taking a deep dive into this new world of online business. And of course, at that point, it's more about like information products and things of that nature. Like e-commerce really didn't even exist yet, but message boards were in play and people were kind of bouncing around ideas. And so what this did is it made my day job more tolerable, because I knew that I was wearing this other hat behind the scenes of a secret agent. I knew that at lunchtime I was going to throw on my Superman cape and I was going to go over to the library and jump on the terminal and try to figure out this internet thing. And in my evenings and weekends, I would be doing it too. And so again, today, I would encourage you, like, now you don't have to go to any library or jump on any terminal or sign in or only get 30 minutes. You can
get on your phone.
But in terms of becoming a secret agent today, I would encourage you to really visualize what would your life look like in an ideal scenario. Where might you work? Where might you live? Where would you want to travel? What kinds of people would you want to be associating with? Because there's no reason you can't start doing some of these things today, even if you're not quite ready to make that leap. Yeah. And so the power of gamifying is proven, and it's really pretty extraordinary. If you can turn a so-called challenge into a game or quest, it can really relieve a lot of that tension and stress and anxiety and actually make it fun.
Maybe we ought to come up with that game.
Yeah, what are we going to call it?
I don't know. I think you already have it. It's called Ultimate Vita. I'm curious, how did you make your first dollar online?
My first dollar online was actually by spamming people. I will point out spam was perfectly legal.
Back then it was, yeah. And it was almost tolerated.
Yeah, and it was actually more than tolerated. It was welcome. In the way I did it, it was actually welcome. So here's the thing. I knew that I wanted to do something marketing related because marketing had always fascinated me. I had majored in marketing, as I mentioned, and to me, marketing is really all about psychology and human behavior and what makes people tick. And so I had this brilliant idea that I'm going to offer a free website analysis, which at that time, I will have you know, was very avant-garde. And
it's also really difficult.
It was difficult because websites in the late 90s were, well, first of all, a lot of businesses didn't even have them. But the businesses who did have them, it was basically like a glorified brochure. It was like an electronic brochure. And so I knew that there was a lot of room for improvement in these websites, but what I didn't know is how to actually reach these business owners or the administrators of these websites. And so right about at that time, there was a software tool that would scrape the AOL member directory. If you remember AOL, you got mail, you know, that whole thing.
It was on there.
Yeah, exactly. And so I bought this scraper and I put in keywords like CEO, director of marketing, you know, business owner, things of that nature. And I scraped people's member profiles to hopefully reach people who had a website or owned a business. And again, I just offered a free website analysis, you know, no strings attached. And it was incredible. Like I remember I sent that out sort of late at night because I knew I had to go to sleep. And I knew my alarm would go off at like 6:17 a.m. the following morning. And I'd have to put on my suit and tie and commute to work and do all the things I hated doing. But at the same time, I was excited because I just like sent out this offer. And I remember thinking, yeah, I hope I get a couple of responses and, you know, maybe I can do some analyses. And I was just floored. I got like dozens of responses and then they just kept flowing in the rest of the day. And I think I got over 100 of them. And so my first thought was like, holy shit. I had the kind of imposter syndrome. I said, who am I to be giving these, you know, business owners who are a lot older and maybe wiser than I am advice on how to, you know, make their website better. But then I took another look at the website and I said, yeah, I think I know a thing or two.
Right.
You know, they're just not getting the job done. And so I really went into it with the mentality of just blowing people away. Like another mantra I believe in, I call it BOSS, BOSS, be of supreme service.
Yeah.
And I intentionally call it BOSS because we want to flip the script of what a boss means. Like I hate having bosses. I would be the world's worst employee. But when you boss it up in that way, I think it'll always serve you well. And so I really went all out with these analyses, really focused on blowing people away. And from those analyses that I delivered, I actually got my first 3 paying clients.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the first one who signed on. I think I quoted them $500.
Yeah.
And then so she said, well, what are your payment terms? I was like, payment terms. I hadn't thought about that one. And I'd read somewhere like ask for 50% up front. So I said half up front, and then the other half on completion. And so she wrote me a check for $250, and that $250, Franklin, may as well have been $1 million. Like I was on top of the world. It validated everything. I had created this thing out of thin air, and then I had really gone big on being of service. and people were willing to pay for it. And so that's kind of how it all started, with very legal spam.
Well, we've got some fast forwarding to do. I'd love to hear more about your whole journey, but I'm really curious about the work that you're doing now is to help people find and experience their ultimate freedom.
It is. It is.
And tell us a little bit about how that came to be for you.
Sure, sure. So the other big passion that I've had, along with freedom and entrepreneurship, is world travel.
Yeah.
I sort of became a digital nomad, I think, before the term officially existed. And what I would find in terms of traveling to different countries and meeting people of different, ethnicities, genders, ages, just from all walks of life, I would find that there was this common element of frustration, of feeling trapped, of feeling, again, like there must be a better way, but I don't know what it is. I don't know how to get it. I know that I've seen people who are more free. I've seen people who can do what they want, but I just don't know how they do it. I don't know what it is. And I just don't think it's for me. And, I'm sure you must need a lot of money or a lot of connections, or you have to be really smart. And hearing that same message from so many people just broke my heart, because it's actually not true. It's just, it's a misperception, and a very harmful one. I didn't have any special privileges. I don't come from a lot of money or connections, or I don't consider myself any smarter than the next person. But what I did have was we can either call it ambition or stubbornness, depending on how you want to frame it. That again, come hell or high water, this was the life I wanted, and I wasn't willing to accept another one. And so the next evolution for me was when people did start to get a glimmer of hope that there might be this other way. Of course, they would say, "Okay, Jesse, but how do I do it?" And so I realized that when I was finally able to break through and achieve that freedom for myself, I did so much of it by instinct.
Yeah.
And that was great for me. And that gave a great life for me. But what it didn't do is create a system, a methodology that other people could follow without my direct involvement.
Yeah.
Where I could really actually make an impact and actually serve these people that I so wanted to help, not just on a one-off basis, because I had mentored people here and there behind the scenes, but I was really determined to create a system, a methodology that people could follow. And so that's when I really went into my cave and I said, okay, I'm going to figure out what are the common elements. I'm going to put it together in the system. And so that's when this Art of Freedom book was born, and that's where we go from here.
The other thing that really strikes me, Jesse, is that you just have a facility with figuring things out. It's like some people don't have the patience to work things out the way that you have, and I think that having a blueprint is a great thing. And you had mentioned in your intro that having a blueprint was something that you would have loved to have had when you were starting out, and now you have it to offer to other people. One of the things that I find very interesting is that there are some folks that are resistant to using blueprints because they want to do it all, from scratch. And what I always tell people is, like, the blueprint doesn't tell you what kind of decorations you're going to put in your house. It just tells you what the structure of the house looks like, and the way that you do the work within that blueprint is 100% unique to you. So the blueprint just gives you a structure within which all of that great energy, that creative energy, can flow. Can you tell us a little bit about the book itself? If people were to pick that book up today, first of all, who would be the perfect person to pick that up?
Yeah. So the subtitle of the book, it says "Kiss Your Job Goodbye, build a tribe, leave a legacy.
Yeah.
And so I want to make a crucial distinction here. A lot of people, of course, are looking to leave their jobs, but it's not a requirement. What I've come to realize, even in the short time since the book is published, is that a lot of people really value their job security, but at the same time, they want to develop other options. And so that's absolutely fine. It's not my role to say whether you should or shouldn't have a job or what your life should look like. As you said, my role is to create a blueprint for you to then massage and tweak and refine as you see fit. And so the challenge I see with a lot of so-called blueprints and formulas is that they very much play to the author's or the creator's strengths, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is how I did it, so therefore this is how you should do it. That to me is a flawed model, because my strengths might not be your strengths. My passions might not be your passions.
Yeah.
So my intention with the book was to create a timeless model with certain pillars that will always be relevant, but that give a ton of wiggle room for you to tweak and refine the system into something that works well for you. And so a main tenet of that blueprint, again, is build a tribe.
Yeah.
We all have in my view, we all have a primal desire for connection and for belonging.
Yeah.
Now, that does not mean it doesn't need to look a certain way. It doesn't mean we need to be extroverted. It doesn't mean we need to be in a room full of people. It doesn't even mean we need to go on camera if we're not comfortable with it. Again, you do you. Don't try to do me. You were very gracious to say that I have the ability to figure things out, but I actually am pretty bad at most things. I have a few core strengths, and I believe strongly in doubling and tripling down on those strengths, and then outsourcing everything else. And so however you like to communicate with people, whether that's on camera, whether that's in audio format, whether it's writing, again, play to your own strengths. That's number one. And then number two, going back to that BOSS acronym, be of supreme service. That's what we want to keep front and center at all times. So we want to constantly be obsessed with how can I add value to the people that I'm looking to serve, and realizing along the way that everyone else has that same primal desire for connection and belonging as we do. Right. So if we are of service, right, and if we are communicating in a way that plays to our strengths, then we begin to foster this tribal atmosphere where people are able to not only bond with us, but also crucially with each other. And again, there's no predefined way of what that needs to look like. Facebook groups is a popular format for it these days, but there are a ton of other community platforms that work just fine. Of course, some people like to take it in person and not just online, and that's fine. Having meetups and masterminds and things of that nature are great. And of course, with the pandemic, Zoom is in all of our living rooms now, and virtual hangouts and coffee dates and happy hours and all the rest of it.
Conversations like this one.
Exactly. And so building that tribal atmosphere is definitely a key element. And then the final piece is really, it's leaving a legacy. And that gets back to Ikigai, which we talked about earlier. It's what am I actually doing? Why am I doing it? What kind of impact do I want to make that will last even beyond, when I'm no longer doing this, or when I'm no longer here, quite frankly. What kind of ripple effects do I want this to have? Whether that's to my family, my loved ones, or even like on a more global scale.
I have one last question for you, Jesse, and that is, The person who needs to find you, what would they be entering in a Google search?
That's a fantastic question. Freedom lifestyle comes to mind.
Yeah.
Certainly, in today's day and age, the Great Resignation
Yeah.
is a term that comes to mind a lot. But what's really been present for me is, what if we flip the script actually from the Great Resignation to the Great Liberation?
Oh, yeah, I love that.
What if the pandemic has actually created an incredible opportunity to reimagine every aspect of our life, from how we work to how we communicate, to how we socialize, and then all of these things collectively present perhaps the greatest opportunity ever to really, liberate ourselves, set ourselves free, in whatever way that means for you. Because again, freedom is such a sacred and personal and intimate word, right? And so for one person, it might mean jet setting around the world and buying whatever toys they want, and that, that's cool. For say a single mom, it might simply mean spending all the time at home with their kid, and that's equally cool. And so there's no judgment or comparison of it's never like which freedom is more virtuous or worthy. Like everyone gets to decide. And so this to me is very much a choose your own adventure model.
Very cool. So if someone hears this interview and they say, I really need to talk to that guy, where do they need to go from here?
They need to go to www.ultimatevida.com, VIDA, which means life in Spanish.
Yeah.
The other thing I really love communicating individually with my readers, with my listeners. And so I'm a very real person. I'm an accessible person.
Yeah.
I'd love you to email me at Jesse, Jesse, at ultimatevida.com. I do read my emails. I do respond, and I'd just love to hear more about you and your journey and how I can support you.
And I can back that up, folks. Jesse is someone who very generously offers support, and he's also just a wonderful and wise person to know. So, Jesse, I'm grateful for your time this morning, being my guest here. Anything you want to say in closing?
Franklin, it's been an honor. I just, now is our time. Now is our time to liberate ourselves, to liberate our loved ones, to liberate our fellow human beings.
I'm all in.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Your Own Best Company. If you enjoyed the show, would you do me a favor and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast host? If you really love it, leave me a review or share it with your circles. If you feel like your career is reaching a dead end, or you're feeling a deep sense of dissatisfaction in your work right now, I help people discover their gifts and then find or create new opportunities that are the best fit for their talent, experience, and lifestyle. Email me at coaching@franklintaggart.com for more information. I also help people start, finish, and launch creative projects, and I offer an ongoing marketing mastermind for solopreneurs and freelancers. More information on these programs and services can be found at franklintaggart.com. Thanks again for spending this time with me.